Hi class, and welcome to the flip lesson, Evidence for Evolution. You should be in your notes packet and you should be on page 3 for this lesson. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Please pause as you need to complete your notes. Okay, evidence for evolution. How did Darwin's ideas and observations influence our current understanding of evolutionary theory? And what types of evidence support our theory of evolution? We're going to first talk about fossil evidence. So all of these different evidences come from different lines of science or different areas of science. All of these different scientists working on their own different areas, and yet giving evidence for evolution as they go. So fossil evidence. What are fossils? They are the preserved remains of living organisms or their traces dating from the distant past. Fossil evidence compares remains of older life forms to current life forms. So you're pretty much writing what's in red as we go through this PowerPoint today. Where can fossils be found? They can be found in sedimentary rock. That's really soft rock. They can be found in bogs. If you don't know what a bog is, think swamp, very wet area, lots of, maybe a little warm and kind of swampy. Fossils can be found in tar and in amber. Amber is like tree sap, think mosquito from Jurassic Park. Fossils can also be found in ice. So the fossil record is not really complete. For one thing, not all fossils that formed over time have been found. And another thing, most everything that dies does not form a fossil. If something falls into sedimentary rock, bogs, tar, amber, or ice, it will form a fossil. But many things just die and their bodies and bones degrade and they don't form fossils. So there are some gaps in the fossil record, but from what they've been able to notice, that there are resemblances between older life forms and life forms that are around today. So how are fossils dated? Two different ways. First of all, they can be dated by positions in the layers of rock. Older fossils will be near the bottom or down lower in the rock, and newer fossils will be towards the top of the rock. The second way to date fossils would be using radioactive isotopes. So everything that's alive has carbon in it, and carbon-14 is a radioactive isotope. So when something dies and leaves a fossil, either the organism itself or the rock around it can be dated using carbon-14 radioactive dating. More pictures of fossils, mosquito and amber, rock impression, dinosaur footprint, and a whole list of whale fossils. So the whale has been one organism where they have been able to find all fossils from all the different ages, and all the way back from 48 million years ago, 52 million years ago. And there's whale intermediates, what they think is like an intermediate fossil in between an ancient whale and a more current whale. Okay, second type of evidence for evolution is called biogeography. Biogeography is the study of past and present geographic distribution of organisms, or how they're spread out around the globe. It's used to explain the relatedness of species found on different continents, or how species are related even though they live on different continents. Okay, next line of evidence, embryology. This is studying early development, okay, embryology. There are similarities in early development of different species that suggest a common ancestor for these species. Example, gill slits, or gills, and postanal tails are found in embryos of humans and fish. In humans, gill slits develop into the parts of your ear and our throat, and luckily our tails disappear by the time that you're born in most people. In fish, pouches develop into gills, and tail. The tail does fully develop in a fish because, as you know, fish have tails. So what do you think? Take a look at these two pictures. Can you tell what two organisms these two are? I'll give you a hint. One of them is a human. Can you pick which embryo form is from a human? As you can see, they both have tails and they both have gill slits right around the head area. Okay, here we go. Human was, yes, the embryo on the left was the human. Did you guess right? The embryo on the right is actually a chicken embryo at about 4 weeks of age. Okay, next line of evidence. Number 4 is anatomy. Anatomy is comparing body parts of different organisms to determine evolutionary relationships. We're going to start first with homologous structures. Homologous structures, structures that develop from the same body parts. They are similar in structure, but different in function. Example, human arm and whale fin, cactus spine, and pea tendril. So let's take a look at this picture over here of the human arm and the whale fin. Similar in structure, but different in function. So if you look underneath a human arm, you have all of the bones. Humerus, radius, ulna, and then the wrist bone and hand bones. The finger bones are called phalanges. So they're color-coded for you. If you look over at the whale, you can see that there is a radius and an ulna bone in the whale. There is the carpals in the whale. There's the long, in the whale, the phalanges are really long. And of course, in the whale, they're not used as fingers. These bones are used to form the flipper of the whale and used to help the whale swim in the ocean. In the human, the arm is used for grasping and picking up things. So different in function, although underneath they are the same. This gives evidence that the whale and humans have a common ancestor. All right, let's go down to vestigial structures. These are structures that no longer serve purposes, but they are remnants from earlier ancestors where they did serve a purpose. Example, in whales there's a pelvic bone, although whales don't have legs in their current form. And in humans there are wisdom teeth which no longer serve a purpose. Okay, I'm going to go to the next slide and we'll look at some more examples of vestigial structures. Oh, before I do that, let's take a look at this whale picture. Here's the pelvis and femur in the whale. You can see that the bones are not even attached to the spinal cord in the whale. But this is just a vestigial structure indicating that possibly that whales used to walk on land, right? There's bones there like there used to be leg bones in the whale in an earlier ancestor. If any of you have ever seen or owned a snake, you can investigate and see if the snake has limb buds, because snakes do on their belly have little hind limb buds that you can find, especially I think pythons have that, indicating that at one time snakes possibly had legs as well, a snake ancestor. There's the wisdom teeth in humans, another vestigial structure. And FYI, just because you can live without an organ does not make it vestigial. Okay, anatomy continued. Let's talk about analogous structures. These are structures that perform a similar function but are not similar in structure or origin. But instead, the similarities of two organisms' analogous structures are due to the organisms living in similar environments. It is not an indicator of close common ancestry. Okay, I want to talk about this one example here of the dolphin and the shark. Everyone knows what a dolphin and a shark look like. Their body forms are very, very similar if you think about it. They both live in the ocean and swim. They both have really streamlined body parts. The dolphin, though, is a mammal and the shark is a fish. So they are not related and they don't have a close common ancestor. But the streamlined body are analogous structures. They perform a similar function, but they're not similar in origin. And they're not similar in their underlying structure. Sharks are made of cartilage, and dolphins have bones. One more example of analogous structures, butterfly and bat wings. Butterfly wings are made of tissue. Bat wings have underlying bone. So butterfly wings and bat wings both have the same function, but they do not have the same structure. Okay, analogous structures are underground stems of potatoes and underground roots of sweet potatoes. A vestigial structure would be eyes on a cavefish. Cavefish live in the dark their whole lives. They really can't even use their eyes to see. And analogous structures are large digging claws and long snouts seen in both placental and marsupial moles. Okay, proof of evolution that you can find in your body. While you watch this, follow along and see if you have a particular vestigial tendon.
Your body is a temple, but it's also a museum of natural history. Look closely and you'll see parts that aren't there because you need them, but because your animal ancestors did. No longer serving their previous function, but not costly enough to have disappeared. These remnants of our deep history only make sense within the framework of evolution by natural selection. With your arm on a flat surface, push your thumb against your pinky and tip your hand slightly up. If you see a raised band in the middle of your wrist, you've got a vestigial muscle in your forearm. That tendon you see connects to the palmaris longus, a muscle that around 10 to 15% of people are missing on one or both of their arms. It doesn't make them any weaker though. There's no difference in grip strength. In fact, it's one of the first tendons that surgeons will take out so that they can use it in reconstructive and cosmetic surgeries. You can find the palmaris longus across mammal species, but it's most developed among those that use their forelimbs to move around. In primates, that means the muscle is longer in lemurs and monkeys and shorter in chimps, gorillas, and other apes that don't do a lot of scrambling through trees. It's not the only leftover muscle that we've got. Look at the three that are attached to our outer ear. We can't get much movement out of these muscles, especially compared to some of our mammal relatives who use them to locate the sources of sounds. Presumably, this would have been quite helpful for early nocturnal mammals. In humans, you can still detect the remnants of this adaptation with electrodes. In one study, researchers recorded a spike of activity in the ear muscle cells in response to a sudden sound. Not enough to move the ear, but detectable. And you can probably guess the location of the sound based on these results. It came from a speaker placed to the left of the study subjects. So this is their left ear subconsciously trying and failing to pivot toward the sound. You can see another futile effort by our vestigial body parts when you get goosebumps. When we're cold, tiny muscles attached to our body hairs contract, pulling the hair upright, which causes the surrounding skin to form a bump. For our furry mammal relatives, the raised hair increases the amount of space for insulation, helping them stay warm. Birds can do this too. You've probably seen a puffy pigeon on a cold day. Adrenaline is one of the hormones involved in the body's response to cold temperatures, and it's also part of the fight or flight response. So it helps some animals appear larger when they're threatened. And it may be why surprising and emotional turns in music can give some people goosebumps. And then there's our tail. At the end of our spine are a set of fused vertebrae. Some people have 3, some people have 5. We call it the tailbone. It now serves as an anchor for some pelvic muscles, but it's also what's left of our ancestors' tails. Every one of us actually had a tail at one point when the basic body plan is being laid out at around 4 weeks of gestation. Human embryos closely resemble embryos of other vertebrates, and that includes a tail with 10 to 12 developing vertebrae. In many other animals, it continues to develop into a proper tail. But in humans and other apes, the cells in the tail are programmed to die a few weeks after they appear. Very rarely, though, a mutation allows the ancestral blueprint to prevail, and a human baby will be born with a true vestigial tail. The most adorable vestigial behavior is the palmar grasp reflex, where infants up until they're about 6 months old have this incredible grasp on whatever you put in their hand. There's a similar reflex for their feet. I wanted to show you this great piece of footage from the 1930s where they demonstrated this behavior. These babies are only 1 month old, and you can see that their inner monkey can support their entire weight.
Okay. I do believe we have one last evidence of evolution to talk about, and that is molecular biology or biochemistry. So when you're studying the molecules that make up living things, scientists find that all of these things are incredibly similar on Earth, showing that all of Earth's organisms share a common ancestry. Almost identical biochemistry. DNA and RNA structure is identical in all organisms. Also, ATP molecules, those energy molecules, are found in all living systems because all cells use ATP for energy. A third example, complex proteins like cytochrome C are identical in many different organisms. They are exactly the same. So look at the diagram and the species pairing and percent divergence of a DNA sequence. So if you look at a human compared to a chimpanzee, there's only 1.7% divergence or difference in DNA sequences between a human and a chimpanzee. If you go all the way to the other end of the scale, a human and a tarsier, this little guy on the tree there, there's almost 25% difference in DNA sequences. Human and a spider monkey, 10.8%. So what this tells us is that when you think of the tree of life or the tree of living things, humans and chimpanzees share a more recent common ancestor than humans and spider monkeys, or than humans and the tarsier monkey. Humans and chimpanzees share the most recent common ancestor compared to all of the other types of monkeys. All right, so I'm not going to ask you to watch the whale video right now. As long as you finished your notes on page 3, you are good to go for this video. What I do want you to do is go to Schoology and take the quiz that's waiting for you there. So it would be called Evidence of Evolution Flipped Lesson Check for Understanding. So please go and find that and take that, and that will be your evidence that you completed this lesson. Thank you.